And a good Tuesday evening, everybody. Chris McDonald with you on this Tuesday night, the 24th day of June, 2025. We are first part of a doubleheader tonight. We'll be back on a little bit later, around 11. We've got some news to share with you. No, not breaking news, but we're going to do a little news headline show tonight, a little bit later. We were thinking earlier today, perhaps, that we were going to have Brad Johnson on tonight. Brad's doing better. He is out of the hospital. He told me he's back on the trail. I can't say exactly what he said because this is a family show, but I got the message that him and Elvis are back at it, and oh, the fun I have on this show. The fun that I have on this show is just exciting. It's just
Elementary, my dear
it's
Watson.
elementary, my dear Watson. I haven't been able to do that. It's been so serious around here for the last few nights. Goodness gracious. Hopefully we can relax a little bit tonight. Enjoy the show. We got some new stories to cover and share with you. I encourage you folks, Telegram, the Mac News and Journal Report. We're going to change the name of that channel to something soon. We've got a Facebook page we're going to be changing the name of too, we think, and just getting a fresh look here as we get into the summer, into the fall. And we're going to be doing some things we'll share with you maybe later tonight. But do be back with us, and we'll take your questions. Now, we're live now. Somebody asked out there, are we live? Are you joking me? I mean, of course we're live. We're live every night. Sometimes we have a pre-recorded interview. But let me see here. Let me make sure. Yeah, I'm alive. Yes. Chris is alive. Yes. So we're good. I've got to say something. I got a statement today on Rumble. And I don't know if it was Saturday night or Monday. I don't think I'd said this Monday night. I think it was Saturday night or Friday night. But we did a poll, and I made the comment because there were, it was 96-4 or 97-3, and I said there's got to be some knucklehead out there that voted no, that they didn't believe that it was justified for Trump to go into Iraq or Israel to go in Iraq. Well, someone sent me an email, and I want to tell the young lady that I was actually grateful you did. I'm not making fun of this at all. At least she was brave enough to tell me why she voted no. But she said, I'm one of the knuckleheads that voted no the other night. I had to smile about it. Knucklehead is an affectionate term my dad used for us boys, so if that was offensive, we didn't mean it to be. I think I have to apologize for breathing these days. It just seems that the word knucklehead offended some real knuckleheads. I don't know. But anyway, she wasn't offended by it. But I thought it was funny what she said. But she said something about the economy. We're going to talk about those things tonight because the economy is not crashing. If anything, oil is below $70 a barrel, folks. Trust me, your gas prices are about to take a downward plummet. May not happen tomorrow. It is summer. They're going to try to gouge you to death with the 4th of July coming up here next week. But the situation in Iran and all of this turmoil with everything going on in the Middle East, you would have thought that the media and some of this that this young lady was experiencing was nothing but perpetrated by the media. And I mean, she may not agree with that, but I'm sure she heard somewhere that gas prices were going to shoot up to 130 a barrel. CNN said that over the weekend. They were predicting that because of Trump's actions Saturday night. Well, just the opposite's happening. It is literally it's going to get close to $60 a barrel before the week's out, what I hear. And all these panicans and all these people that were running for the hills, these social media darlings, and I don't call them darlings, they're a bunch of they're elementary, my dear Watson. Chris, got to be careful. Did y'all hear what? I know some of you heard the video. We're going to play the video tonight. That's sort of why I'm waiting to do it on the late show, because I don't want to ruin our early bird tonight. We got a great guest. Y'all love him. Bill Federer is going to come on here in just a second. We're going to talk about Iran's history of violence. But be with us tonight. But I just want to tell the young lady that was brave enough to at least tell me why you voted no. And I appreciated it. And you're not a knucklehead. That's just a term my dad used for us boys. And, when I say things, folks, I say things 99% of the time tongue-in-cheek. Please don't mistake my personality for trying to offend and call names and stuff like that. It's just Southerner. We Southerners like that. I said it on the radio show. John Matola is in the house, I'm sure, tonight. John and I, we get along so good. He's an Italian New Yorker. Or a New York Italian. I'm not sure what direction. I'm just a Southern redneck. So we redneck Southerners and New York Italians, we get along just great. And we're always laughing about Trump because the New Yorkers get him, and we Southerners get him too. But he just let it all hang out this morning. And we're going to talk about that tonight on the Late Show, because if I do it tonight, it's going to ruin Bill Federer's interview, and I don't want to do it right now. So be back with me after all this is over. You're going to enjoy Bill. It's about a 50-minute interview, so we'll be done by 10. And then we'll take a little break, and we'll be back around 11:30 tonight. It'll be a late-night show. It'll be on all the networks. But let me just say, for those of you that were scared the sky was going to fall and World War III was about to break out, we're sorry to disappoint you. None of that happened. It was a bunch of fear-mongering individuals that do a lot of that these days, and people don't have a brain, put stuff out there, and people believe it. And I don't know who's worse, the people saying it or the people willing to believe it, instead of just being calm and trusting God and having faith and know that, tried to tell you Sunday that nobody's going anywhere. Israel's not going anywhere. Iran's not going anywhere. And these things, folks, are just part of the end time travail. It's how it is, you know. But Matola and I, we get along so good because he understands and I understand that, you know, the Yankees, you know, what they do, they talk like Trump all the time. They just like that, and they don't blink an eye doing it. We Southerners, we talk the same way sometimes, but we do it with a smile and a twang, you know. And we Southerners will invite you to our front porch and hand you a glass of tea while we're talking like that. So we're a little different, but we're the same. But I just found it funny. But the beatdown that he gave about the media is worth playing about 60 times. Because wait till you hear what he said to CNN to their face today. It was priceless. I didn't agree with him about his criticism of Israel, and I'll get to that tonight. I don't want to talk about that. What you're about to listen to, Bill Federer is going to take you on a history lesson about Iran. And he is going to tell you how we found ourselves in the place we did this weekend with the American military forces having to go into Iran, destroy their nuclear plant. But he's going to give you a little insight to this jihadist state. It's not been like this forever. But our government is to blame for why it became one. Not Trump, but past leaders. He's going to talk about that. And it's going to be a very informative interview. I guarantee you will be playing this interview back over and over tomorrow. You'll listen to it more than once. I'm going to ask you out of courtesy, if you've got a question or a comment, McFilesforum@gmail.com. Please respect our audience. Please respect Bill Federer. This ain't the time to be putting 10 paragraphs in about what you feel about Iran and this and that and the other tonight. This is not the show for it. We will take your questions tonight. See, I'm doing this calmly. But Tola's out there laughing. He's saying he's actually doing this calmly, like a Southerner. So I'm not screaming and yelling and trumping on you. I read something today that what Trump did today is going to be the ringtone of millions of phones in America. I hope not. I hope not. You're going to be shopping in your grocery store and you're going to drop your bag of groceries if it is. But it's just I feel better. I feel good tonight. Look, it's been a very serious weekend, but we've had some serious stuff go on. So just sit back, and that's why I felt like Bill Federer was a perfect night. I hope we're going to get Brad on this week. Hope he can come Thursday night. But I think tonight we need a little break and listen to a guy that's going to make you feel good. He always makes us feel good, and he always gives us something to think about. You're going to listen to this again. Please respect him, okay? You can affirm. I don't mind you putting a sentence in. Don't be putting paragraphs. Don't be chatting with each other. Listen to Bill, okay? I know you can do that. Y'all are a good audience. We love you. And I promise you, you will get something out of this before it's done tonight. You're going to learn something you don't know. I did today. And he's got a book about it. He'll share with you at the end. It's a beautiful day in the McFiles neighborhood because it's elementary, my dear Watson. Here's Bill Federer. We'll be back at the end to say goodbye, or not goodbye for the night, but just for so long. Listen, may you be blessed tonight by this interview. It's going to help you. It's going to really bless you. Bill Federer, AmericanMinute.com. Put some fire in that house. We're grateful to see everybody tonight on the Tuesday night McFiles. I'm sorry. It's just been a fun day today. It's just been one of those days. We've needed it. Trust me. Here's Bill. And a good evening, everybody. Chris McDonald with you. A very special pre-recorded McFiles interview. We are always thrilled, always honored to have this dear guy with us, William Federer, AmericanMinute.com. He has written so many books that Chris has had to go out and get a banker to get them all. And I have to go on the street and hold one of those cans that says, "We'll work for food," after I visit the Bill Federer bookstore on his website. But it's all in good jest and all in good. He's wrote some other books. I just love his encyclopedia, the American Book of Quotations. I encourage you to go to the site if you want to know about America and our faith and things of that nature. There's no better site, no better source than this man right here. Bill Federer, good to see you today. It's been a while, and good to see you, friend.
Yeah, Chris, great to be with you. Lots going on in the world.
Well, I was thinking as we were sitting here, we had you on last month, and that's just been maybe 30 days. And you're going to have to stop doing this. Have a 30-day period, and us come to the brink of the end of the world, Federer, when you come back. So just sort of lighten up a little bit. And hopefully next time you come, the world won't be on the brink of Armageddon like it was this weekend. But all jokes aside, yeah, it has been a very eventful weekend. And Bill, it's this whole situation with Israel and Iran. It's there's a deeper war that's going on. It is not just Iran and Israel. It's really Islam in the West. And I think that gets lost sometimes in these small skirmishes. Not this was small. It was 12 days and some death and casualties resulted. But the religion behind Iran, the one that drives them to do the things they do, and they're an apocalyptic regime, unlike any in this world, because they have pretty much a death cult to them. They've got a death wish. They don't care if they go up in smoke and take the whole world with them. And a lot of that's rooted in the Quran and Islam and their beliefs. I want to talk with you a little bit about that. And you got a book about the pilgrims and how they escaped the chaos of some of this. We'll talk about that. But I'm going to turn it over to you because that's Chris's 2 cents for the day. Tell us a little bit about the West and this war on Islam and vice versa. Really, Islam's war on the West.
Yeah. Well, the book, Treacherous World of the 16th Century and How the Pilgrims Escaped It, one of the pilgrim ships were captured by the Muslim pirates. In 1625, the pilgrims sent back to England a ship with 800 pounds of beaver skin and dried fish to do trading, and a Turkish man of war captured it in the English Channel, took the ship and the crew to Morocco and sold them into slavery. So even the pilgrims had to deal with this. In the 1600s, there was a Muslim pirate named Dragut Reis, and he led the pirates to attack Ireland, the city of Baltimore, Ireland, and they rounded up the whole town at nighttime, put them on ships, and took them to Morocco and sold them into slavery. The Sultan in Morocco was Moulay Ismail, and he had captured an estimated 25,000 Europeans. And he put them to work building his palace at Meknes. And if they weren't hammering in sync, then they would get kicked off the wall. I mean, it was totally cruel. He had hundreds of wives and over 1,000 children, and he would come out dressed in yellow, and all the servants knew that some of them weren't going to survive the day because he would hunt his own servants, and he would get blood on his outfit, and so he would always carry a change of outfit with him so he could put on clothes that weren't bloody. And they captured a Portuguese ship, and there was a nice jeweled hatchet that was expensive, and they brought it and gave it to the Sultan as a gift. And he tried it out on one of his black servants just to see how good it worked. I mean, he was like totally cruel. And so the Muslim pirates in Morocco were the ones that would capture European ships. And then so the European countries began to give annual tribute. So France and Germany and Spain, they would pay an annual amount of money to these Moroccan pirates to leave their country's ships alone. And fast forward, when America breaks from Britain, we're no longer covered by the British tribute payment. And so the Muslim Sultan, he's called the Pasha in Morocco, he's like, "Oh, you mean America is not part of Britain anymore?" No, we're independent. We're our own country. And he's like, "That means you got to pay your own tribute." And so the day after Jefferson was elected the third president, he gets a demand from the Pasha of Tripoli for $250,000 extortion tribute payment. And Jefferson sent in our Marines, fought the battles. It's called the Barbary Pirate War. And so we have this history that goes on. And a couple things worth noting is that 1798, Napoleon invaded Egypt and captured it. And then the British defeated Napoleon's navy at the Battle of the Nile. And now Napoleon's trapped in Egypt. And he tries to, accommodate the Muslims and build a mosque. And, he brought in the printing press. And then Napoleon tried capturing, the Holy Land and failed, and then left a note on his second in command's desk saying, "You're in charge." And he goes back to Europe and puts the crown on his head. So now he's the emperor of Europe. But Napoleon faced these situations. He said when his troops first came in to Cairo and these different cities, and they fought, then the Muslim soldiers were peaceful. But when they sensed he was weak after the British defeated his navy at the Battle of the Nile, that's when they began to attack. And so he said every day he'd have to kill a couple of them just to keep order. And finally, they took up their last stand in the mosque. The mosque is also considered a military building. So when they're building mosques all across America and the world, in their mind, it's also a military building. And one former Muslim that I talked to said, "Yeah, they got secret basements and secret rooms, and they got weapons and artillery." And I said, "Artillery?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, they got everything in there." And so I said, "What are they waiting for?" He goes, "Oh, well, they'll know. They'll get the signal when it's time." And it's like, "Oh, great." But so Napoleon had invaded Egypt. And then you had the Ottoman Empire, and it began to weaken. So the Ottoman Empire started originally in 1071 AD is when the Turks began to invade into the Byzantine Empire. Those were called the Seljuk Turks that the Crusades were fought against. And then you have the Ottoman Turks. The Ottoman Turks conquer Constantinople in 1453, cutting off the land routes to India. And that's when Columbus set sail looking for a sea route. But the Ottoman Turks controlled all of Turkey into Eastern Europe and the Holy Land, Egypt, and then all of North Africa. And it's called the Ottoman Empire. But they didn't force people to convert because it was the non-Muslims that paid the taxes. So once somebody would convert and become a Muslim, they didn't have to pay taxes anymore. So as the centuries went on, the Christian population dwindled and their tax base disappeared. Wow. And they became poorer. And so that's the situation in the late 1800s. Little interesting trivia. You had the Russians were fighting the Turks over a part of Ukraine and Crimea. And the British come in and are helping the Muslim Turks to fight the Russians. And so this is like the same area where Ukraine and Crimea and the Black Sea are today. And so when the Russians lost in 1856, I think is the date, that's when they realized that, hey, Britain won. Britain might try to take our colonies in Alaska, and we don't want Britain to get them. So let's sell them really cheap to America. And so that's when William Seward bought Alaska from the Russians as a result of the Russians losing this Crimea War. But so the Ottoman Empire would have shrunk on its own, but it keeps getting the Western powers to upgrade their military, right? You had King Francis I of France, but now, the British with this Crimea War, and but when we see the discovery of oil coming out of the ground, that was significant because in the 1800s, oil came from whales, and they would chase the whales around the world, Moby Dick, and then kill them and boil their blubber down into this white oil and then sell it for whale oil lamps. And in 1859, oil was discovered in Pennsylvania, the Drake oil well, and then it was discovered in Oklahoma, and then it was discovered in Iraq or in the Ottoman Empire, Kirkuk. And then Germany industrializes in the late 1800s with Kaiser Wilhelm II, but Germany doesn't have oil. And so they make a treaty with the Turks, with this Ottoman Empire, to get the Berlin-Baghdad Railroad so that the Germans and the Turks are now teamed up. And the Germans give guns to the Turks, and the Turks give oil to the Germans. And then Winston Churchill changes the British Navy from coal to oil, but there's no real oil wells in Britain. And so in 1908, the British formed the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, and you know it better as BP.
BP.
Right? British Petroleum was originally named the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company.
Interesting.
And so when World War I starts, half of it took place in the Middle East. And so when World War II is over, they redraw the map of Europe and they redraw the map of the Middle East. And so you no longer have the Ottoman Empire. And so France takes a little sliver, Lebanon and Syria. Russia encroaches into Armenia. Italy wants a little bit, parts of Africa and Libya, and the French Foreign Legion, right? They get Morocco and Algiers, and then the British. The British more or less become protectorates of the Suez Canal and Egypt, and then the British Mandate, and that's the name for the Middle East. And so the same way after the Spanish-American War, America had the Philippines as a protectorate and Puerto Rico as a protectorate. And so Britain had the British Mandate as a protectorate. And then France had Lebanon and Syria as protectorates. And so two people that we need to throw into this picture is Chaim Weizmann. He's a Jew from Russia.
Yes.
Who fled when the Tsar Nicholas was killing Jews. Remember the Fiddler on the Roof movie?
Yes.
And he and his family go to Britain, and he's a chemist. And during World War I, the British are running out of explosives, and they need a solvent called acetone to make these explosives. And Chaim Weizmann comes up with a bacterial fermentation process to make acetone. And they take breweries and turn them into these chemical factories, and they have the acetone, they have the explosives. Britain wins the war. They want to thank him and make him a sir or a knight, give him some land. And he said, I would really like land for my Jewish people. And they said, well, how about Uganda? The British control Uganda. And he's like, I was really thinking of the traditional area. And they go, oh, yeah, the Holy Land.
Holy Land, yes.
And so they issue the Balfour Declaration, which the boundaries are basically the same boundaries that God gave to Moses, and that were the boundaries that were filled up by King David and Solomon. But I need to back up one step. Where did the Jews get this idea going back to the Holy Land? From Christians. Yes. And so in the early 1800s, you had the Second Great Awakening revival, and you had preachers that are called millennialists. That's because they finally discovered in the Bible that Jesus will come back and rule and reign for 1,000 years. And the word 1,000 is millennial. And so it's always been in the Bible, but they just happened to notice And so they're preaching on it. Now, when he's coming back was a big question. There was a group that thought Jesus was going to come back in 1844. They were called the Millerites. And they got this big frenzy going across America that Jesus is going to come back in 1844. And when he did not come back, a lot of people left the faith. And so it was called the Great Falling Away, a lot of backsliding going on.
Right.
And but nevertheless, these millennialists went to Jewish synagogues and said, you need to start thinking about going back to the Holy Land to fulfill the prophecies. And so the idea of Zionism, and Zion is the word for the Temple Mount, and King David called the Temple Mount, Mount Zion. But that idea came from Christians. Jeffrey Alderman wrote in Jewish Chronicle, November 8th, 2012, the Balfour Declaration was born out of religious sentiment. Arthur Balfour, British Foreign Secretary, was a Christian mystic who believed that the Almighty had chosen him to be an instrument of the divine will, the purpose of which was to restore the Jews to their ancient homeland, perhaps as a precursor to the second coming of the Messiah. So here's a Jewish publication saying that the Balfour Declaration was given by these politicians who happen to be Christian, and so in anticipation of Jesus coming back. So this article goes on. The declaration was thus intended to assist in the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. This appealed to Lloyd George, the British Prime Minister, believing in the prophecies of the Bible he knew inside and out. And then, so Jews on their own would begin to buy land in the Ottoman Empire. A little farm here, a little farm there. And then they would move there and build little communities. Anita Shapira wrote in the book Israel, A History, published 2014, the idea of Jews returning to their ancient homeland as the first step to world redemption seems to have originated among a specific group of evangelical Protestants that flourished in England in the 1840s. They passed this notion onto Jewish circles. So here's this Jewish author citing that it was evangelical Protestants in the 1840s that gave the Jews the idea of going back to the promised land, perhaps as a first step to world redemption. So one of the Jews that was inspired by this was Theodor Herzl, and he organizes the first Zionist Congress in 1897 in Switzerland. One of the people that attended this was Henry Dunant, and he is the first recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize because he founded the International Red Cross. And so, inspired by the Bible, the Jews go back or start buying these farms over there. And then after World War I, because of Chaim Weizmann and Lord Balfour, they issue the Balfour Declaration, giving the Jews the boundaries of the land that's part of the British Mandate that came into being after World War I. And Lord Balfour said, my personal hope is that Jews will make good in Palestine and eventually found a Jewish state. It is up to them now. We've given them their great opportunity. And so that's one individual that we need to focus on is Chaim Weizmann. And because of his contribution to the British during World War I, there's the Balfour Declaration.
That's correct.
But there's another individual, and it's Lawrence of Arabia.
Lawrence of Arabia.
He was a lieutenant in the British military, stationed in Cairo, and he was sent on an assignment. Meet with the Arab Muslims and see if the Arab Muslims would be willing to help the British defeat the Turkish Muslims. So we have two different kinds of Muslims, Arab Muslims, Turkish Muslims. And so Lawrence of Arabia, instead of just reporting back, he takes it upon himself to promise the Arabs, if they will help the British defeat the Turks, they will get all the land in the Middle East. It's like, whoa, wait a second.
Wait a minute.
Wasn't it all
Yeah.
given to the Jews with the Balfour Declaration? He goes, yeah. And he admitted that he lied to
Wow.
the Arabs. In his book, Seven Pillars of Wisdom, published 1922, he said, had I been an honest advisor to the Arabs, I would have advised them to go home and not risk their lives fighting for such stuff. He goes on, I risked the fraud on my conviction that Arab help was necessary to our cheap and speedy victory in the East, and better that we would win and then break our word than lose. For being a successful trickster, and to prevent this unpleasantness from arising, I began in my reports to conceal the true stories of things. So here he is. He's lying to the Arabs, saying you'll get all the land. And he's lying in his reports to his supervisors. And then when the war's over, all of a sudden, the British Empire is coming to this realization, you promised the Arabs what? And so the British are like, okay, well, what do we do now? And so they take the son of the Arab leader, the Sharif of Mecca, and the British take a part of their British mandate and they carve out a brand new country called Iraq. And they take the son of the Sharif of Mecca and make him king of Iraq. And his name is Fazl. And now Fazl, because of Lawrence's promises, he thought he was going to get Iraq and Syria. And when he finds out that France wants Syria as a protectorate, he gets driven out, he gets upset, and his brother Abdullah starts a guerrilla warfare against the French. And Winston Churchill is like, wait a second, Arabs, we're friends with the French. We like teamed up together and defeated Germany. We don't want to start a war with the French. And so Winston Churchill, at a lunch in Cairo, pulls out a napkin and a pen, and he begins to draw a map of the British mandate. And then he takes 2/3 of it and takes it away from the Jews, and he creates another brand new country that is called Transjordan, or across the Jordan River. And so today it's just called Jordan. And he takes Abdullah, the brother of Fazl, the king of Iraq, and Abdullah is also the son of the Sharif of Mecca. He takes Abdullah and makes him king over Jordan. And so now we have the Jews been given this land, but because of Lawrence Arabia's unauthorized promise, this land is now cut, 2/3 taken away, and made into another country, Jordan. And now, for their benefit, the king of Iraq, Fazl, and the king of Jordan, Abdullah, were friendly with the Jews. And King Fazl said, we feel Arabs and Jews are cousins in having suffered similar oppressions at the hands of power stronger than themselves. We look with sympathy on the Zionist movement. We wish the Jews a most hearty welcome home. And then the Sharif of Mecca, the father, he says the resources of the country are still virgin soil and will be developed by the Jewish immigrants, that the country is for its original sons. So here's this Arab leader calling the Jews the original sons, for all their differences, a sacred and beloved homeland. And then you have Abdullah, and he says this. He says, no people on earth have been less anti-Semitic than the Arabs. The persecution of the Jews has been confined almost entirely to the Christian nations of the West.
Wow.
Jews themselves will admit that never since the Great Dispersion, which is 70 AD, the Jews were driven out by the Romans, never since the Great Dispersion did Jews develop so freely and reach such importance as in Spain when it was an Arab possession. So during the 700 years that the Muslims controlled Spain, they treated the Jews relatively nice. And so Abdullah goes on, with very minor exceptions, Jews have lived for many centuries in the Middle East in complete peace and friendliness with their Arab neighbors. And Lawrence of Arabia called the Sharif of Mecca and his sons modernists because they were tolerant of the Jews. Well, the Sharif waffles on a treaty with the British, and the British pull back and say, you know what? We thought we were being nice to you. We gave your son a country. We gave your other son a country. And because you don't want to play ball, we're going to pull back and we're going to let Aziz ibn Saud conquer Arabia. And so in 1924, the Saud king conquers Mecca, and the Sharif is driven out to Cyprus. He dies. They bury him on the Temple Mount in a crypt. So there's 30 some odd acres on top of the Temple Mount. Yes, there's the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but there's also these buildings that are crypts, and the Sharif of Mecca is buried in one of them. Anyway, so the Sharif is driven out. The Saud family now controls Arabia. Why is this important? The Hajj. So one of the 5 pillars of Islam is once in their life, they're supposed to make a pilgrimage to Mecca.
Yep.
And the modernist Sharif had this get along attitude, but the Wahhabi Saud family said, no, we're going to push this Wahhabism, this violent version of Islam. And even Lawrence of Arabia said, Wahhabis have a heretical form of Islam where everything is puritanical, that you have to embrace their radical views or you're killed. I mean, he goes on in his book, 7 Pillars of Wisdom, to describe how radical the Saud family is. But now they control Mecca. And so now people from around the world are being infected with Wahhabism. Wahhabism is the ideology that birthed every modern terrorist group. And then 1928, 6 members of the British-run Suez Canal Company formed the Muslim Brotherhood. So now we have the Muslim Brotherhood adds a plan to this ideology. So you had leaders after World War I wanting to become more westernized. You had Fuad in Egypt, you had Ataturk in Turkey, you had the king of Afghanistan, you had the Shah of Iran, and they're all wanting to teach women how to read, let them wear, the clothes they want, let them go to school. Most of it elevated the position of a woman in society, and the Sauds didn't like that. The Wahhabis didn't like that, and they would threaten to assassinate these leaders. And so Abdullah is on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and he's assassinated.
Wow.
And then they try assassinating Ataturk, and he dies. They have an assassination attempt on the leader of Egypt. And so these leaders of these Muslim countries want to be more Western, but if they're too outwardly Western, these fanatical Muslims will assassinate them.
Wow.
And so, you look at Iran. So it had the Shah, and he was pro-West, pro-women, pro-freedom. And the World War II starts, and there's this movement to throw him out and replace him with Mossadegh, uh, saying that, oh, Mazadek is democratically elected. But for most of these countries, what that means is whoever controls the media narrative um, gets elected. So it's not really an honest vote by the people because the people only vote for what they know, and what they know is only what's told to them by the media. And so whoever controls the media really controls the democracy. So they say, oh, he's democratically elected, but what does that really mean? It means that the elites that control the media got him
Yeah.
elected. Anyway, um, so the leader, Mossadegh, in Iran after World War II is beginning to side with the Soviet Union.
Mm.
And so we have Truman does nothing after World War II. And so when all these Eastern European countries are being overthrown by these media controlled coups, like they call it critical theory, where KGB agents come into a country and observe all the groups, ethnic groups, religious groups, economic groups, racial groups, and they would categorize them as victims or oppressors, haves and have-nots. Then they would pit them against each other to create riots. And then they would escalate the riots into violence and bloodshed. Why bloodshed? Because then people think emotionally and not logically. I just had my friend killed. I don't want to sit down and talk, government theory. And then people want to, when all this bloodshed happens, people want to blame somebody. Somebody has to blame. And then the media blames the new leader of the new country for all the problems. They overthrow the
Oh,
leader and put
yeah.
in a Soviet puppet. So this is called Behind the Iron Curtain. And the Soviets did it successfully. Truman does nothing. And then Eisenhower's the next president. And he decides when Iran is leaning toward the Soviet Union to do the KGB thing in reverse. Allen Dulles is the head of the CIA, and he sends Kermit Roosevelt Jr., the grandson of Teddy Roosevelt, over to Tehran. And he recruits mobsters and gangsters and radical imams and gets people all upset, and then organizes the protests and riots and bloodshed. And then when people are all upset, co-ops the media to blame Mossadegh for all the problems. And when his popularity falls, they put him under house arrest and they reinstall the Shah family. And so the Shahs loved America because we helped put him back in power. And then you have and he was back in power until Jimmy Carter
Jimmy Carter. He goes to
abandoned him and
Carter.
put in the Ayatollah. And
I'm going to ask you a quick question about Carter. And this, we got about 10 minutes, and this brings us to a good place because I think what you've given us is how this has evolved to this moment. But from that moment in 79, when the Ayatollah took power, that has really been the war, the Wahhabi war, what do you want to call it, the radical part of Islam that has been at war with the West. Do you think Carter knew the extent of the violence and the jihadism that the Ayatollah was bringing, or was it naivety? It's just an opinion question. Do you think he even realized? Because there's been a debate for 46 years of us, because the Shah was painted by most of the left as an evil, despot, tyrant. And I know that there's never going to be, look, when you deal with the Middle East, you deal with Middle Eastern despots and tyrants, and there's no good leader. But as you said, he was at least somewhat friendly to the West. This Ayatollah bill was absolutely insane. It's what took our hostages. And we have been dealing with this nation in this sense. But what do you think about Carter's actions? Because history has been sort of mixed on this. I fall on the side that he should have left the Shah alone. We may not have had the Islamic Revolution we have to this day.
right. So it just happened in South Korea, where you had the leftist people wanting to do voter fraud. And the president was a Christian, and he wanted to seize the machines before they erased them all. And they accused him of instituting martial law. And they had, even Bill Clinton was over there marching in the streets. And so then they basically did fraud and threw him out. And now they put in a communist as the head of South Korea. And so
Have mercy.
since the Shah was pro-American, the globalists didn't like that, and so they began to stir up the people against the Shah. There's even reports that they had their, you know, people dressing up in Shah soldier uniforms and locking people in a theater and setting it on fire. And everybody saw these people dressed in Shah soldier uniforms, and so they blamed the Shah. And so it was all this manufactured hatred channeled at the Shah. And then there are solid evidence that Jimmy Carter and his administration was in communication with the Ayatollah while he was exiled in France.
France. It's interesting.
And basically, our CIA gave the green light to bring the Ayatollah to Iran and install him. And you think, well, why did they do it? Well, these globalists look at the world as a chessboard, and they want to rearrange it so they can set up their one world government. And so Jimmy Carter, a peanut farmer in Georgia, and a Christian Baptist, and he doesn't have the money to run for president. And you have David Rockefeller and the globalists and the Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations people putting the money in to get him elected. I, years ago, talked with Pat Robertson. He and Lou Sheldon and a few other leaders went to Jimmy Carter's governor's mansion after he was elected president. And they said, wow, you're a Christian. We got all these great people that we can put in charge of all the government departments, and we can really make America great. And while they're talking, Jimmy Carter had a little tear in his eye. And Lou Sheldon, afterwards they're walking out, said, did you see that? I think we really impacted him. And Pat responded, no, he had the tear in his eye because he knew he was not going to do anything that we asked.
Exactly.
And sure enough, the Rockefellers picked all of Jimmy Carter's cabinet.
Makes sense, Bill.
Full of globalists. And Jimmy Carter was just the front person to keep the Christians at bay. But behind the scenes, they were working their one world Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, pro-abortion, pro-everything left agenda.
Anti-Jew.
And so Zbigniew Brzezinski was Carter's national security advisor, and he allowed the rug to be pulled out from the Shah, and the Ayatollah took over Iran and held hostage all of our soldiers, our embassy over there, and then until Reagan got in, and then the Ayatollah in Iran funded Hezbollah, and shortly thereafter, in Lebanon, you have the U.S. Marine barracks blown up. And the American response was to tuck tail and run, pull out. And so now we're projecting weakness. We abandoned the Shah, we abandoned Lebanon, and then you have the Iran-Iraq war. And so we certainly don't want Iran to win with the Ayatollah. And so Ronald Reagan and Rumsfeld, we're now arming and training Saddam Hussein and Iraq to fight Iran. And so Saddam was our friend then.
Yeah.
1980, 1988. And then there's the Soviet-Afghan war. And we always think of two sides. It's more three sides. It's really, instead of checkers, it's more like Chinese checkers, right? And so when you see a couple sides fighting, there's always the third side that wants to take advantage of it. And so the same way that the KGB was doing their critical theory and going into Eastern European countries and finding groups and pitting them against each other, the KGB founded ELN in Bolivia, FARC in Colombia, and different liberation groups in Africa, and the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was formed in Moscow by the KGB solely for the purpose of sowing division in the Middle East to keep it from becoming pro-American. And they got this Yasser Arafat to be the head of it. And so now you have the Wahhabi violent teaching with an organized Muslim Brotherhood plot, with the communist tactics of breaking a country into groups, putting them against each other. It's an extremely volatile cocktail of bad stuff.
And we've been drinking it for 46 years, buddy. We have been drinking it for 46 years. Keep going. Got about 5 minutes. I do want to just ask you a quick question about Iran in general. You mentioned the barracks. We have the Khobar Towers. Is it fair to say that this regime that we're trying to deal with in good faith, which I believe is impossible, has got a lot of blood, American blood on its hands that has never been accounted for? And nobody until Trump had in Israel now has tried to do something about it and build the aspirations of this regime. You think about everything you just said. What would happen if they got a nuclear bomb? Because that Molotov cocktail you just described, it becomes nitroglycerin, brother. And it's not just the Middle East that would be affected by that. That would be a global explosion, would it not?
Yeah, I heard somebody say that communists were not afraid to die, but they were not in a hurry. That fundamentalist Muslims are in a hurry. They think that if they die in jihad, they are going to a sex party. And so you have there's quotes of this Ayatollah or the past Ayatollah saying that if we die, we get rewards in paradise. So
Yeah.
it's like so, but you have this. So you have the Soviet-Afghan War. It's a proxy war, and so the U.S. 1980 around that time is arming and training the Taliban to fight the Soviets. Charlie Wilson's War, the movie that Tom Hanks did, talks about it being the largest covert CIA operation. What does that mean? That means the CIA is arming and training the Taliban, and it's covert. Nobody in America knows about it. But it's such a big deal. Tom Hanks does a movie on it later. And then Sylvester Stallone did a movie on it called Rambo 3, where our CIA is giving all of our weapons and stuff to the Taliban. And what do? They fire off these shoulder-mounted missiles and knock down, Soviet planes and helicopters. And so one of the people that got trained during this time was Osama bin Laden. And then you have George H.W. Bush and his plans for a new world order. And Saddam goes from being our friend to our enemy. And then you have Bill Clinton fooling around with Monica Lewinsky, and he's running for re-election and fires some missiles into Bosnia. And we have the Bosnian-Serbian War. But Bill Clinton is sending arms through Iran to the Bosnian Muslims to fight the Serbian Christians. And then you have George W. And we defeat Saddam. And military strategists said there would be no ISIS if we had not defeated Saddam. What's that mean? If it's an authoritarian country with a king, you conquer it, you just replace the king and put in somebody that's friendly to your side. You do not dismantle the entire country, the government, the military, everything. And then all you're going to do is have gangs. And the toughest gang will end up taking power. And that's where ISIS came from.
So true.
And then, so there wouldn't have been any ISIS had we not, defeated Saddam. And then think of all the people that ISIS killed under Obama. Even John Kerry had to admit that it was a genocide because all these Christians being wiped out in the Middle East. And then you have Biden. And I left out Hillary Clinton under Obama, and we take over Libya, get rid of the leader there, Gaddafi. And then they're funneling arms through Benghazi over to Syria to take out Assad. Assad was an Alawite, and Alawites are so moderate that the fundamentalist Muslims don't even consider him Muslim. And so Alawites, and Assad viewed his role as a balancing act, and he wanted to keep all these minority groups taken care of. He was giving millions of dollars to these Christian minorities because he viewed himself as a protector of them.
Absolutely.
And but the our country was arming and training the different factions to stir them up to overthrow him. And then you have Biden, and he, after 20 years of Afghanistan being free, he surrendered it to the Taliban. And I actually talked to soldiers that said there were Chinese planes flying in while our planes were evacuating people out.
I don't doubt that.
Lo and behold, rare earth metals for batteries. And so Biden gave Afghanistan to China. And then you even come more recently. So Trump gets elected, but in the lame duck period before he can actually take office, Biden lets these ISIS-backed fundamentalist Muslims take over Syria and kill Alawites. There has been a genocide of Alawites, these moderate Muslims in Syria, since Biden started this war and then left office, and Trump was like thrown in his lap. And then you have Iran, and Iran basically under Trump's first administration, he said anybody that does business with Iran is not going to do business with the U.S. And if you buy Iranian oil, you're not going to do anything with the U.S. And so Iran had no customers, and it was hurting financially. And then Biden gets in and takes all that off, and then, Iran ends up getting billions and billions of dollars from us, and then indirectly because now they can, do their business worldwide, and they the evidence shows that they were very close to producing nuclear weapons, and with their sworn promise to use them to wipe out the little Satan of Israel and then the big Satan of America. But years ago, I met the Shah's son at a meeting in D.C. area. And so when the Shah evacuated to America, the family grew up in Maryland. And so the Shah's son is in Maryland. And I remember meeting him, and he was trying to get, back then it was the Bush administration, to help him get restored to the throne in Iran, because he had kept touch, with people under the ground that were like willing to help, and they didn't like the Ayatollah, and the Bush administration didn't have time for him. But we have to forget that prior to Jimmy Carter, Iran under the Shah loved America.
It's a good point.
Anyway.
Final few minutes here. Tell everybody about the book that's got a lot of this information in it. And I got one final question for you, because we're up against a time break here. Do you trust Iran now to do what's right?
Well, I don't trust the Ayatollah. I actually talked to families that, had to evacuate out when the Ayatollah took over, and they went from, anyways, they witnessed the change in the country. So I don't trust the fundamentalist Muslim attitude is you only respect strength, all the way back to Muhammad. When you're weak, you make treaties until you get strong enough to disregard them.
Wow.
Sort of like Lenin. Treaties are like pie crust, meant to be broken. They view treaties as ceasefires so they can rebuild up to fight again. They have no concept. The word Islam means submission. And a Muslim is one who has submitted. And they think there'll be world peace when the whole world has submitted to the will of Allah. So we think world peace is different groups just getting along. They think world peace is world Islam.
Go ahead. I'm fine. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, a moderate Muslim thinks the world will submit to Allah later, maybe in the distant future, maybe at the end of the world. Since it's so far off, they really don't think about it. But the fundamentalist Muslim thinks the world is supposed to submit to Allah now, and they're really excited, want to help make it happen. But that's all that stuff is in a book. It's called What Every American Needs to Know About the Quran, A History of Islam and the United States. And then when I started off talking about one of the pilgrim ships captured by the Muslims, that's in this book called The Treacherous World of the 16th Century and How the Pilgrims Escaped It. And both of these are available on my website, AmericanMinute.com.
Buddy, I believe I'll be listening to this one several times. It's been good stuff. I want to thank you for being with us, and we'll have you back on soon. Bill Federer, everybody, AmericanMinute.com. My friend, you outdid yourself today. Thank you so much, and be safe in your travels, and thank you for being with us. Folks, we'll be right back. Any final thoughts before I say goodbye? Any final?
No, there's hope. We just have to look to the Lord.
Look to the Lord. Absolutely.
Amen.
Everybody, we'll be right back. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. Thank you, Bill. Good stuff there with Bill Federer tonight, and we are grateful that you've been with us. Was that not good? Folks, you got a history lesson. That's a college level history course right there, and there ain't nobody better than Bill Federer. He's promised to come back next month, and he's writing a new book right now, and he's going to come back and talk with us about it in July. I encourage you to visit his website, AmericanMinute.com. AmericanMinute.com. And we are so grateful that you were with us tonight. That was fantastic, Jeb, over in Facebook tonight. It was very fantastic. Good stuff. And I hope that you enjoyed it. If you got a question real quick, I'm going to take about 5 minutes. And if you got a question or two, put them in the house right now. We'll take them. If it's about the interview, we'll do our best to answer. We're not Bill Federer, but we'll do our best to answer. We ain't got to the good stuff yet tonight. This is what they call the dessert before the meal tonight. Yeah, I will again, Jeb. I'll be listening to this one again. And Corey, it was incredible information. A couple of things I took away from it, folks. I was not aware that Bill Clinton funneled those weapons to kill Christians through Iran to the Bosnians. The Bosnians were basically purging the Serbs, the Christians. That was in the 90s. I was actually in Africa when all that was going on. Well, I was visiting Africa that week, and everything started happening. And it was very Clinton-esque to do stuff like that. He said something that I hope you remember, and this is on the Biden administration. Look, Assad was not a good man, but one thing Bashar al-Assad did in Syria, he protected the Christians because he was an ally. And because of the Biden blank foreign policy, they pressured Assad into oblivion and caused the Syrian people to uprise and get rid of him. And now you've got a cutthroat jihadist in power, and I know Trump's trying his best to get him to play nice. And folks, just remember this. Maybe people understand this, but maybe there's just something to think about. Just throwing this out to think. Trump's only going to be with us 3 more years. We have no idea who's coming after 2028. All of these Islamic nations are going to play nice right now. They will, because they respect Trump. They know what he will do. I think he showed them that Saturday night that he's not afraid to send B-52 bombers over any of their cities, any of their facilities. If they start acting up, Trump will pull the trigger in a heartbeat. He was angry this morning. I ain't never seen President Trump publicly angry like he was this morning. He's letting it all hang out. And we'll talk about that here in a little while. But just remember this. Whatever the Muslim governments are doing tonight in goodwill to America, it does not mean that it's going to last past Trump. So you better enjoy this little time of respite. But I will tell you, Syria was turned over to a despot who slaughtered hundreds of thousands of Christians just in a few months after the Joe Biden administration left office. In that lame duck session or lame duck time between November and January when Trump took office, it was hideous. And when Trump got in office and in power, they, from what I understand, it's sort of subsided, but it's not a haven for Christians right now. But it was fascinating, some of this stuff. I did not really realize, I never really thought about Winston Churchill, him being the one that drew up the Transjordan map. And folks, that Transjordan map has haunted the Middle East for almost a century, because the Transjordan division has basically been the argument of the Palestinians that they wanted both And they were never entitled to both. That should tell you right there, folks. This land grant was given to Israel, not just by God, but the Balfour Mandate, the British Mandate, the Balfour Declaration of 1914, Lord Admiral Balfour was Christian. And he gave Israel that land. And basically the you think about the prophetic nature of what he did. And, it's been a while since we've done a study on the land. We need to do another one soon. You Bible students, we will be getting into the ancient hatred in Ezekiel 35 again and the coming around lessons of what we're about to get into. And we may even touch on it a little bit Sunday morning, Sunday night. Don't miss Sunday morning, Sunday night. We're going to be continuing to talk about Ezekiel 38 and 39. It was good stuff, Sunday. We had a lot of we had some people I didn't even realize were listening to us, and they reached out to us, some very important people, very precious people to me. And I was actually flattered, and it was a kind. I wasn't doing it in an ego way, but it was a blessing to hear that the teaching Sunday morning was reaching far and wide, and people learned some things Sunday about the Middle East and some of the fallacies that are going on. But regardless of that, this land grant was given to Israel politically too, and Churchill was the one that carved it up. And I didn't ever realize that. I'd never put that connection together. And I've always respected Churchill, but that was really the ignition for the flames that we're dealing with tonight in many ways in that Palestinian situation in Israel. And I will tell you this again tonight, folks. The Antichrist that's coming, the figure, the man of sin, for those of you that believe in that's coming. There are a lot of people that don't believe in Bible prophecy. Well, Chris ain't one of them. Chris teaches it every morning on the morning Bible studies here on the McFiles Faith Network. This man of sin is going to solve this problem for a season. He's going to solve it. It will be a false peace, but he will solve all these things. But I do encourage you to go back and listen to this interview. It's telling, and Carter, his legacy. The left media has painted him as a great hero because of the Habitat for Humanity homes and all that. Jimmy Carter had the blood of millions, and I'm talking millions of people on his hands, of what Iran has killed over the last 46 years. It's not just the Christians, and it's not just the Jews that they have done ugly things toward, but even their own people. And the implementation of Sharia law and the absolute crazy psychopathic Ayatollah Khomeini. Look, I was a freshman in high school in my latter years of being a freshman going into a sophomore when the hostages were taken. I sat in American history class on the day of Reagan was inaugurated, and my American history teacher was letting us watch the inauguration, and she even said, walking into the classroom, I remember that day or something to the effect, she says, "Guys, I've got a feeling the hostages are coming home today because Reagan is taking office." And she wasn't even a conservative. She didn't even like Reagan. And sure enough, by the time that Reagan's hand lifted off that Bible after he had taken his oath, them hostages were in the air, because Iran knew that they were not dealing with Jimmy Carter anymore. And it was another fascinating thing. It's just my few takeaways from this was the incident with Pat Robertson and Jimmy Carter. Pat Robertson was a Kingdom Now person, and he believed that you could put Christians in the government and cause this utopia, this kingdom age that is spoken of in the Bible, that only Christ can bring about, folks. Only Christ can bring peace to this earth. There's going to be no peace on this earth in sincerity and in fullness until Jesus Christ physically comes back to this earth. This corruption that you see tonight, all these wars and rumors of wars, the pestilence, the corruption, the famine, the things that we see on this earth that make us all shudder sometimes, these things are not going to be solved until Jesus Christ comes back. And that's it. That's when he will fix all of this the right way. But Pat Robertson believed that if you put Christian presidents in place and you put Christian governors in place, and I'm not saying those things are not good and godly. I believe that leadership makes a big difference in cities. It's making a big difference in Florida. It's making a big difference in our nation. It's making a big difference in a lot of areas. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, But folks, you can put a Christian in every single role right now, at least, and it's not going to make a change in this earth. It will make a change in that area. When Christ comes back and the glorified saints take over, it's going to be worldwide. It's going to be a worldwide change. It won't be isolated. This corruption and all of these things that we see tonight will end. And we will no longer be dealing with the whims of corrupt men and women trying to control government and control presidents. They're not going to be controlling the King of Kings. He is going to be telling the world what to do. If the world don't bow down to it, the world will perish. It will not be a democracy. It will be a theocracy. You'll either listen to God and the administration of the saints of God over this earth, or there will be death penalties and people will die during the millennial kingdom. That's really the only reason they will die, because death will be reversing itself all the way up to the end of that 1,000 years. Bill touched on that a little bit. It's great teaching tonight. This was really super. I probably one of his best interviews I think we've ever had with him. But it all goes back to Iran. Iran used to be our friend. This jihadism, this maniacal Hamallah situation, threatening us with nuclear weapons and death to America, death to Israel, has not been the way Iran was. I was, again, a child. I was a teenager when the Shah was disposed, and I didn't understand the politics of it in high school. As I've gotten older, I've understood the politics of it. And Jimmy Carter's from my home state. It was an embarrassment what he did. But he's got the blood of millions of people that he's going to give an account to now in the judgment, because he's dead. He can't go back and change this. I never saw any fruits in Jimmy Carter's last days that he had any remorse about anything he did. I mean, I'll put it like this. Jimmy Carter's last words, when they asked him through his son, what is your wish? His last words was, I wish I can live long enough to go vote for Kamala Harris. So that told me everything that I needed to know about his heart. He was not remorseful for doing anything. He was one of the most anti-Semitic presidents we've ever had in the history of presidents. Short of Bill Clinton, short of Obama. Obama, Carter were about the same. Joe Biden was anti-Semitic. All these presidents that claimed they supported Israel, it was mouth service only. They didn't support a thing. No, they would have sold Israel down the toilet. You better be grateful tonight, folks. Trump may have his issues, and he may have his warts, and he may have his fleas, but I will tell you this. If we'd had Kamala Harris in that White House, we would be facing the butt end of a nuclear weapon tonight, and the world would be being held hostage by this maniacal regime. I'm going to leave it at this. We'll talk about this more later tonight. I don't trust him, and I don't know, how long this ceasefire will last, and I hope it will last a while, but I will guarantee this is not going to last forever. And I will caution you to get overly excited about any goodwill that you see coming out of the Middle East to America tonight. It's out of respect for Trump. It's out of respect. And it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But I will tell you, depending on who follows him, the true colors of this religion are going to come out eventually. And look, I know what's coming. The Bible is clear what's coming. And I get it. And I don't lose any sleep over it, but it is a concerning thing. I pray for people. I pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I pray for the soon coming of Jesus. I pray for all of you. I pray for the safety of all these people in these regions, because we're in perilous, dangerous times. We're in dangerous, perilous times. Corey, you said Corey was worse than I thought, and I with you, I didn't understand all the politics of it then. I didn't understand the politics of it. Silver Creek, his failure with Iran led to his defeat to Reagan. A lot of people believe that defeat was tied to our humiliation for 444 days at the hands of this regime. And Carter, he was so inept. He tried to rescue the hostages. The helicopters ran into each other. Our people ran into each other, crashed. The mission had to be aborted. And Iran continued to hold these people. And it was the most embarrassing thing. And Carter it cost him a lot. It did. And Reagan wasn't perfect. Reagan had his flaws too, but there was something about Reagan the world respected. And I think it's the same issue with Trump tonight. I think the world deep down may hate Reagan and may hate Trump's guts, but they're not going to mess with Donald Trump. And I think this, I know a lot of you saw the video. We're going to play it. I'm going to try to bleep out the moment of truth, but we're going to do this when the kids are in bed, even the older kids, because I don't want to offend nobody. Everybody gets offended at the win these days, but be with me later tonight. We'll talk about that. But your point is well taken. If you've ever seen the movie Argo is a movie. I wouldn't let the kids watch it. There's some language in it, but it's really rated R for the language more than anything else and the violence, because it's a violent movie. It's about Iran, and it's about a group of hostages that would have been taken hostage with the 444. They snuck out the back of the American embassy before they were taken, and they fled and wound up at the house of the Canadian embassy in Tehran. And the Canadian couple that was the ambassador there from Canada hid our hostages for weeks, and they told the American government that they had them, and they concocted this plan to act like it was a movie that the American Hollywood types were going over to make in Iran during this time. It's all, I mean, Ben Affleck played the CIA guy, but it was a CIA ruse. And it's actually an excellent movie, and they got him out. But but Carter said later that if they would have told the world about it, the other hostages probably would have been executed. That's why they didn't say nothing until after the fact. And those files were just declassified. That movie came out, I think, in 2015. 2012, 2011, somewhere in that time frame. But they could not say nothing then, because if they would have announced that that happened, they probably would have executed all of our people. So I give Carter a little bit of credit, but the humiliation of it and the fecklessness of what he did, and it was his fault. He created this monster. This was avoidable. Everything usually is avoidable when we get down to it, isn't it? So, anyway, our prayers for that. Carol Smith said, I just watched it again. Actually, it's a good flick. It's a good flick. I cannot use the phrase, Carol, that Ben Affleck used. No, the Alan Arkin character used about Argo. We'll leave that one alone tonight. Trump probably would have used that this morning. If he'd have kept on talking, we might have just not got one word. There might have been a few sentences of that. But we're going to talk about that later tonight. Did you enjoy Bill Federer tonight? I tell you, folks, it's one of his best interviews we've ever had. I appreciate him so much. I encourage you to get that book. What every Christian needs to know about the Quran and the West and Islam. It's good stuff. AmericanMinute.com. And support his ministry. And if you want to give me something for Christmas, get me a supply of his books. All right. I'm just saying. Lord have mercy. You ain't got to get me nothing for Christmas. All righty. Listen, let me get together, get my thoughts together. God bless you. God bless your families. We'll be back for the late nighters and the West Coast folks here a bit later tonight. 11:30 maybe. It's 10:30 now. I'm going to take an hour and 50 minutes if I can stay awake. We'll be back tonight, though. We got a lot to talk about. And there are some other developing stories we're going to share with you. Play some video. And we'll be back here tonight. Put some fire in that house for Bill Federer, McFiles4 at gmail.com. If you'd like to chime into the show tonight, thank you all. We'll take a poll tonight. As I said, this was a relief. This is sort of a break of all the negativity and all the news headlines that we've been having to deal with for the last 6 days. And, you know, it was a good relief tonight, and it's good. It feels good to hear something uplifting, positive, and that's what Bill Federer did for us tonight. God bless you out there. Listen, I'll see you back here shortly. Put some fire in that house. Carol, now you've got me laughing about Argo because I think you know what I'm talking about, friend. All righty. Y'all be safe. Be back with me a little bit later if you can be. God bless. Good night.